Hi everyone, it's John from What Up and welcome back to another video, and this will be my Season 2, Episode 5 Easter egg video. Time to unpack here, everything from the hunt for the Black Ajah, Verin and Sheriam Sedai in the tower. There's some stuff there that I won't talk about till after the spoiler warning, of course. Seeing the introduction of Aviendhas, not only was that entire scene with her a big Easter egg, but it also referenced her actual introduction in the book series. We'll get into that in today's video. Book accurate damane collar and leash. That's here, a real call out to the fans. And of course, the most important aspect of the entire episode, and I don't care what anybody says, and that's name dropping Gawyn for probably the first time in the series. He is the best character of all 2,782 named characters. My favorite, of course, and I have the tattoos to prove it. So, there's a ton to unpack in today's video, but if you're new here and you wonder what we normally do, we do review videos, breakdown videos, and Easter egg videos for every single episode of Season 1 and Season 2, so keep on the lookout for those. If you haven't already subscribed, make sure you do so, because we're putting out a ton of content right now, at least one video per day, sometimes two. We're also still covering news, rumors, and leaks for both Season 2 and Season 3, so if anything new comes up, you're going to hear about it from me. If anything comes up for Season 3, you're going to hear about that as well. In the last month, we've already broke 2 castings for Season 3, Aiel and Elida, and there's plenty more to come, but I think I'll leave the rest of it for after Season 2. So if you haven't already subscribed, please do so. You're not going to want to miss a single minute of content over the next couple months from What Up. Now, all of that being said, before we get into the video, I do have to give a bit of a spoiler warning since we're talking Easter eggs. I'm going to reference the books and the show, so spoiler warning, if you have not read the entire Wheel of Time series, that's every single book from the Eye of the World all the way up through and including A Memory of Light by Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson, and have not seen the first season and the first 5 episodes of Season 2 of Sony and Amazon's Wheel of Time show, streaming right now on Prime Video. Be forewarned, I'm going to ruin plot points and character arcs from both of those mediums. Alright, so we're starting off the scene between High Lord Turok and High Lady Suroth. Essentially, in this scene, High Lady Suroth is humbled. She has her eyes lowered, so to speak, for messing up. They cut her fingernails off in front of a group of the Blood and other Shan-Chan people. When this happens, everyone in the background looks down and away, and they're horribly embarrassed. It's just for a split second when they show some of the extras in the background. However, throughout the rest of the scene, very few people will look at her. Of course, some will steal a glance here and there, and the soldiers who are going to take her into custody absolutely do so. But in Shan-Chan culture, being embarrassed or losing face is a fate far worse than death. And they're all terribly embarrassed by it, and I thought it was a really good, nice little tidbit call out to the book series and the Shan-Chan culture, and I think they're going to lean into that in the next couple episodes, because I believe the Shan-Chan are likely going to be far more central to the show, far earlier than they were in the book series. Next is this. This is Fane. What's interesting about this scene is this mirrors what happens in the books really, really well. So Fane does present the Horn of Valir to High Lord Turok. He can't get the box open. The dagger's inside the box, and he really wants the dagger, so that's why he does that. He knows Turok can open the box, and he really doesn't care about the horn anyway. Now, in this scene, he's just presenting it because Shamael and Suroth basically drug him along, but what's interesting is I missed it, and I had to have one of my kids actually tell me about it because I'm a little hard of hearing, have some hearing loss, use hearing aids, so I rely heavily on subtitles when we watch shows, and it wasn't in the subtitles, but there was a whistle when Fane appeared on screen. Now, way back in Season 1, every time Fane appeared on screen, there was a whistle in the background. Now, there was some very obvious sightings of Fane. However, a bunch of times, it was sort of a Where's Waldo Easter egg hunt for him because he was in the background. He was eating in an inn. He was passing by really quickly. He was just briefly in some shots, and it became sort of a fun little hunt for the fans to try to find him. Now, I don't believe we've had that in Season 2 so far. I've been looking, and I've been trying to listen for that little whistle, but the only times we've seen Fane on screen, he's been very central to the shots, so I don't think he's been in the background yet. So let me know in the comments down below if we have seen him or if you folks have seen him and I missed it, but I don't think it's happened just yet. But with this whistle and the introduction of Fane bringing the Horn of Valir to High Lord Turok, I'm wondering if maybe in the next couple episodes they'll sort of pepper him in the background, sort of as a little Easter egg hunt for the fans, because remember, we're in Falm, and Fane's in Falm, and we're going to be seeing a lot of the other actors in Falm in different storylines all converging together for the final episode. So I'm wondering if Fane will sort of be skulking about watching them. Might be something to look out for. And anyway, if you folks happen to see it before I do, let me know in the comments down below. Now, we're going to talk just a bit about this. This is Lanfear's resurrection. I did talk about this a bit in the breakdown for episode 4 because she was killed and it appears that she came back to life because she blinked her eyes. Although this showcased it far better. We get the full scene in episode 5. Essentially, in the book series, when a Forsaken dies by regular means, so that's anything except balefire, the Dark One can resurrect them. He basically takes their souls, crams them in another body, and they jump up and they start doing his bidding. Not like Weekend at Bernie's, for those of you old enough to remember that movie, but they actually do own and control the body and then carry on and keep doing his bidding. They retain the ability to channel their memories, their thoughts, their wants, all of those things. Now, in the show, that's probably going to be a little difficult to do for a bunch of different reasons, but the main one is logistics. You don't really want to recast a bunch of main cast members once a season or once every couple of seasons. It becomes a real pain in the butt. So what they're doing here now, what it seems like they're doing now, is the Dark One is just kind of cramming their souls back into their own body and then sending them on their way, effectively making them immortal, which is kind of what they've asked for from the beginning, most of them anyway, from the Dark One for serving him. Now, when we see Lanfear kind of wake up, we see two things. The first are these little black flecks in her eyes. These are called Saw. In the book series, when one uses the true power, which is the Dark One's essence that can only use with his blessing, you get these little flakes of blackness in your eyeballs. And the more often you use it, and the more power you draw from him, the more of these happen until your eyes completely go black, and at that point, you're so addicted to the true power that you just can't do anything else, and you burn yourself out and die. Now, this is not to be confused with the one power, which is the male and the female half. The true power has no separation whatsoever. Both men and women use the Dark One's essence equally. The only requisite is that they requires blessing to do so. And in the next scene, what we see is what appears to be Lanfear healing herself, something we know can't be done with the one power. You can't heal yourself with it. However, I think what we're seeing here is the Dark One taking control of her body, using the true power, his own essence, to heal her body, and then kind of kicking her back up on her feet and sending her on her way. Either way, these big strands of black look an awful lot like the taint on the male half of the true source that we see in the show, so I'm wondering if this is just the representation of the true power because it's just the taint. It's just the Dark One's oily mess, and he's using it to heal her. Either way, really, really cool, and a nice little tidbit from the book series. Of course, this is followed up by this. This is Lanfear being pure Lanfear. She uses the one power with impunity throughout the book series, basically wreaking havoc and destruction on anyone around her in fits of rage and almost childlike jealousy. This is a really good portrayal of her character. She basically, and I'm not going to show it here in a screenshot, this is just a picture of her, but she explodes this poor stable master's head with one power, with a flick of her wrist. I think we're going to see far more of this, especially when we get later on in the book series adaptation. Probably, I'm going to guess seasons 5, 6-ish, when we get Dumai's Wells, when we actually see some large battles with the one power that are supposed to be quite graphic and grisly. I think we're going to get into more of that gore like we've seen in this particular scene, but either way, this was a really nice call out to exactly how little she feels for people of this age. They're not really human to her, they're just things in her way. I thought it was really neat. Now, the next scenes we're going to talk about are Aviendha and Perrin. Now, this entire scene, start to finish, was one giant Easter egg. Essentially, it's mirroring a scene that happened in the books when Perrin released Gaul. Now, Gaul is a fan favorite for sure. He's sort of a bromance with Perrin. They hang out a lot, and they have a lot of storylines intermeshed with each other much later on in the book series. But Gaul is an Aiel as well, but he's a stone dog, so a different type of warrior society. Basically, he's trapped there because he got in a fight with some Hunters of the Horn, him and one other Aiel. The other Aiel died. He killed a bunch of the Hunters of the Horn and hurt them quite badly. They put him in a cage, and that's his penance for losing the fight, in his mind anyway. Perrin lets him out, and when he lets him out, they fight a whole bunch of White Cloaks who happen upon them as he's releasing him from the cage, and then they sort of go their separate ways afterwards. They don't really meet up again until much later on in the book series. We're talking like another full book-ish, when Perrin goes to the Two Rivers, because Gaul travels with them because he has a debt to him, and they become friends then. Now, as sad as a lot of the fans are to see Gaul not being introduced in this way, this is no indication that he's not going to be in the show. He could show up later on the season, he could show up next season. We really don't know yet. There's been no hints of his casting, but I don't believe they're going to cut a character like that out that's so integral to Perrin's plotline. I think we'll see him, but they needed to introduce Aviendha in a way that made sense. Now, Aviendha was introduced in the book series, and it ties into another little Easter egg that we see later on with Leandrin and Verin Sedai in the tower, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. It actually references the town in which she's introduced just outside of in the book series. But here, I think this is a great way to introduce her because we get to see her in a way that makes sense for the story, and then she's going to travel with Perrin to Falm. They don't split up. They don't go their separate ways. She's going to go with Perrin to Falm, and that's where she's probably going to meet up with some of the other Aiel, because we know that Bane and Chiad are definitely in this season, and we've seen promotional material with them and Aviendha. So either way, the scene with Aviendha with fighting the White Cloaks was mirrored almost perfectly up to and including all of the dialogue in the books, except it was Gaul in the books, not Aviendha. I thought it was a real smart way to introduce her a little bit earlier in the show than she was in the books. Now, what else is interesting here, and this was a really quick bit of foreshadowing, I guess you'd call it, or a little Easter egg call it, Dane Bornhald gives her some water. Later on, you see Perrin basically beg Aviendha to spare his life because he helped them and gave her water. And I don't think Aviendha stops because he's doing that. I think Aviendha was likely not going to harm him anyway, because giving water to an Aiel, especially when they need it, is a fairly big deal. And when Dane did this, I immediately knew, well, there's no way he's going to die in the upcoming fight. And we all knew about the fight because of the promotional material. And I thought it was a very smart way to call out to book fans that he's likely going to be safe from Aviendha in the ensuing battle. I thought it was very neat. Now, the next thing we have here is Dane noticing the ring on Perrin's finger. Now, he says that's of Two Rivers make, a very big piece of foreshadowing, because in Season 3, we're going to see the Battle of the Two Rivers. That's essentially when the White Cloaks go to the Two Rivers and the Trollocs attack the Two Rivers pretty much at the same time, and Perrin goes home without really knowing too much about the Trollocs, but going to spare his friends and family from the White Cloaks. Now, they go there because Dane Bornhald especially has a hate-on for Perrin, and that's because he blames Perrin for his father's death. If you don't know who his father is, it's Joffrey Bornhald, one of the Council of the Anointed we've seen in the very first season. You know, the gray hair, white cloak that was with Valda on the road when they met Moraine and the Embon's Fielders. That's his dad. Now, Perrin was not responsible for his death in any way, shape, or form in the book series, and he likely will not be in the show either. However, he does die during the Battle of Falm, and Dane blames Perrin for that. That, plus the fact that Perrin's killed a bunch of White Cloaks, and he has yellow eyes, and he has to be Shadow Spawn. He's definitely a dark friend in Dane's eyes. That's why he's after Perrin so much. Him saying that he knows the ring is of Two Rivers make means he knows where Perrin's from, and later on, when he decides to take his White Cloaks to the Two Rivers, it's likely not that big of a stretch that he already knew where to go. Very nice bit of foreshadowing here. All right, and this isn't really a huge Easter egg, but in the beginning of the scenes, we've seen Dane talk to Perrin about Aviendha, the Aiel in the cage, and so the last person that went near her cage had their arm broken. And that dialogue kind of came and went, and then Valda comes on screen, and of course he's got his arm in a sling. I chuckled a fair bit at this because Valda was likely the one that went after Aviendha and got his arm broken. I thought it was pretty funny. Either way, a nice little bit to throw in by Dane at the beginning of the scene, and then follow it up with Valda having a broken arm, so he likely wasn't too smart and tried to question the Aiel. All right, so now we're going to get into a bit about Verin and the Brown sisters in the White Tower, because there's a fair bit to talk about here. These scenes where she's meeting with the Brown sisters basically set up a lot of plot lines that happen much later on in the book series that start in the Great Hunt, the Dragon Reborn, and the Shadow Rising in the Tower. And that's the hunt for the Black Ajah within the Tower. A whole lot of things happen here, and we're going to reference them in other little Easter eggs for the rest of the video. But essentially, what we're seeing here is instead of recruiting perhaps Nynaeve, Elaine, Gawyn, whoever happens to be in the tower at the time, because there are times when some of them are and some of them aren't, to hunt for and find these dark friends, these Black Ajah, they're going to actually use the Brown sisters, which in my opinion makes a whole lot of more sense. I mean, the Brown sisters are supposed to be the smartest, they're supposed to do all the research. Verin Sedai certainly proves that. And her initiating this and being in control of the hunt for the Black Ajah is going to make a certain reveal with her character much later that much more sweet, in my opinion. Either way, I thought this was a nice little setup for what's going to be coming in the next few episodes, and likely the next season as well. Now, speaking of Black Ajah, we get this shot of Liandrin in the Ways with Nynaeve, Elaine, and Gawyn. Now, they're shielded, their hands are bound, and they're asleep, so likely been fed fork root or some similar sort of concoction to keep them from being defiant, so to speak. Now, Liandrin has sort of a heart-to-heart with Nynaeve and explains about breaking more than the 3 O's, things of that nature. She doesn't come right out and say that she's a dark friend or Black Ajah, but she heavily implies it, and it's just kind of driven home by what she's wearing. So she is wearing a red sister dress, so it's red. Every Ajah wears the same color as their Ajah, and later on when she exits the Waygate, you see her top coat or overcoat there is dark blue. But in the Ways, while she's talking about breaking oaths and doing things that are uncomfortable, it's completely black. So I think that's a fair bit of foreshadowing to what she's talking about and alluding to the fact that she's Black Ajah. I really enjoyed that bit anyway. Now, we have this. This is probably our best piece of evidence so far that we're going to get the Battle of Falm, including a Shamael and Rand fighting in the sky. So cue all those singing cowboy memes where they're in the sky yelling, because we're definitely going to get a ton of those during the last couple of episodes of this season. But they're talking about Tarmangaidon and turning the dragon to the dark, and how the Tarmangaidon will be fought in Falm. Essentially, I think we're actually going to get that big sky battle along with the Shan-Chan Heroes for the Horn and the White Cloaks fighting on the ground. This was a nice little call out to what we're going to see much later on in the season. I'm guessing episode 8, perhaps episode 7, but likely episode 8 for that big battle. And I can't wait to see it. Now we have this. I have to go back to that Perrin and Aviendhas scene because, well, let's face it, every single time Perrin fights with somebody, it appears that he's either fighting someone who has a really nice axe, or he's fighting beside somebody who has a really nice axe, and Perrin is using either a different weapon or something very plain. So Season 1, Episode 1, he used a woodcutter's axe. Season 1, Episode 8, he picked up a simple soldier's axe, but didn't actually get to use it. And then again, in the fight scenes, we've seen him with a sword so far this season, and in this particular scene where he's fighting the White Cloaks, he picks up what appears to be another simple woodcutter's axe, what he uses to sort of smash and pry off the hinges of the cage. I've heard some people say it was a hammer. To me, it looked a little bit like an axe, but either or, it was such a simple tool, it wasn't embellished at all. You couldn't really, in my opinion, tell too much what it was, and yet Dane's fighting with this awesome piece of weaponry here. I don't know if they're teasing the fans at this point or if it's on purpose, but definitely Perrin seems to be around a lot of axes and hammers. He's just not interacting with them or having to choose between them. All right, up next we have this. This is Moiraine and Lan, and you're seeing this crest on the door of her house. I've mentioned it before in the last Easter egg video for episode 4. I've talked about it a couple other times, but this is a Tree of Life. So it's basically a cutting from the Tree of Life, rather, and it has a big part of her family's history. So her uncle was king, and when he was king, in his pride, so they actually call it Laman's Sin or Laman's Pride, he cut down the cutting from the Tree of Life to make a throne. And that was just to impress people. He was just that prideful that he thought he could do something like that. Now, the kicker is that particular cutting came from the Aiel. During the Aiel's history, there was only one people who never made war upon them, who never fought them, and shared water with them at every other juncture in their history, and that was the Cairhien. They eventually found out who these people were, they made peace with them, they brought a cutting from the Tree of Life, they gave them free reign to the waste to do trade, they never fought them, and they had a peaceful relationship until King Laman did this. Remember, this is Moiraine's uncle. So having this symbol on all of their family stuff goes hand in hand with the fact that House Damodred is basically in the gutter, and that her sister has worked very, very hard to pull them up out from underneath their uncle's shadowless deeds that he did, so to speak. But we've seen a lot of these things within her house, and we're seeing it again here on the outside. And I thought it was a very neat little call out to the history of the Damodreds. Now, this scene here, this is really interesting for a ton of different reasons. And again, I'm going to reiterate something about spoilers here because I know I gave a full book spoiler rating, and a lot of you are watching that haven't read the books, so you don't care about spoilers. But I'm going to spoil some stuff here that is likely going to ruin some things for you folks. So if you really, really care about spoilers, skip ahead probably 2-3 minutes because we're going to have a little chat here. So in this scene, Sheriam has the Book of Novices out in front of her, and she's talking about Elaine, Egwene, and Nynaeve leaving. What's real interesting about this is this goes hand in hand with Verin and her brown sisters that are doing an investigation, and they seem to think that Sheriam is under compulsion. And the use of compulsion indicates that there's Black Ajah within the tower, because compulsion is a banned weave. They're not something they're supposed to do. They're not supposed to actually use compulsion. And compulsion is when you use the one power to make someone do something that they wouldn't normally do or that you want them to do. So this whole scene kind of revolved around the idea of two things. The first thing is Sheriam lying? Is she lying to the audience and Verin, therefore breaking the three oaths, proving that she's a dark friend and a member of Black Ajah? Or was she under the weave of compulsion from someone else, indicating that perhaps someone else is utilizing compulsion on her and is Black Ajah? Either way, they verified that there's Black Ajah in the tower through this particular scene. But what's fun to book readers is the first thing we thought of when we saw this is, well, Sheriam's Black Ajah. We knew that for a fact. It's not revealed until much, much later on in the book series, of course, but being used under compulsion, like having compulsion used on her, rather, I couldn't get my words out there, I'm sorry about that, is likely not the case here. I think what probably happened is she probably got strong-armed by other members of the Black Ajah to put these entries in the book when she knew better, and her hand was probably a little shaky because she was nervous when she did so. It wasn't compulsion, it was the fact that she was lying in a book and was scared to get caught. I think that's likely what we're seeing here, but either way, it points towards Black Ajah. For book readers, we're like, Sheriam's Black Ajah, and for just show watchers who didn't read the book series, they're wondering if it's someone else in the tower, and it's going to keep people questioning. Either way, a really neat scene and a nice little Easter egg drawing conclusions from what Sheriam is in the book series and what other people could be in the tower. I thought it was really neat either way. Then we have this scene here. I have to mention this scene. Of course I have to mention this scene. I've had a bunch of people already message me about it. This is where I believe, is the first mention of Gawyn in the series. I squealed with delight when I saw this. I absolutely did. They're talking about the girls and Elaine leaving the tower for Gawyn's name day. So Gawyn's name day is around bell time-ish, and they're going away for his name day. This confirms that Gawyn's in the show. Now, we've already known that for a while because we've seen some audition scripts between Gawyn and Matt, so we knew that Gawyn would be in the show, and I have already known due to leaks that Gawyn and Glad are not merged, that they are separate characters, so we're likely going to see them both on screen. Will we see them this season? I don't think we will. I believe the additional script that we saw with Gawyn and Matt was likely for season 3, and we know that Glad is already cast for season 3, but we have no indications that they're going to be in season 2. So either way, a nice little throw out here to Elaine's brother in the Bestracan, because he's definitely my favorite character, and if you want any proof of that, there's the tattoo right there. All right, so the next scene we're talking about is Leandrin and Verin and Sedai walking through the halls of the tower. Now, when they talk about Jareen, the town that Leandrin visited, and the fact that she brought back some white asparagus, they're actually referencing two separate Easter eggs. The first Easter egg is the fact that this actually happened in the book series. It wasn't Jareen and it wasn't white asparagus that she was talking about, but another Aes Sedai had returned from one part of the countryside, but actually went all the way around the river around Tar Valon and entered on another gate. That way she could tell the truth when she came back inside, and she was a rebel Aes Sedai coming from the rebels to sort of spy on the tower Aes Sedai, and she could say that she came from a different direction than from the rebel camp. Now, she was caught because she had some vegetation attached to her skirts and whatnot that only grew on one side of the river, and she was called out for it in the hunt for the Black Ajah, and it ended up that she wasn't Black Ajah, but she was one of the rebels instead, because she just used a very smart loophole in the Three Oaths, because she didn't lie when she said she came from one side of the river instead of the other. She just traveled a bit further to get there. So this is a bit of a call out to that, because Leandrin probably either traveled through that town or near that town at one point or another, because she has the white asparagus, and it's not a lie, so to speak. Even though she's Black Ajah and can lie, they're probably still incredibly careful about this. The second thing is the town they're referencing, Jareen, actually is in the Dragon Reborn. It's a town where Nynaeve, Egwene, and Elaine stop at while they're on the road. They're actually going down a river, and their boat kind of gets boosted up on a sandbar, and they go ashore for a bit, and that's where they meet some Aiel who are injured, and they meet Aviendhas for the first time. So that town actually has a special connection to Aviendhas. They didn't showcase those scenes or in Aviendhas being introduced in that way. They used her instead in the cage in the town with the White Cloaks. However, this was a little call out to the fact that that town does exist, and those of us who read the books know that's where Aviendhas was first introduced. So real cool either way. Now we have the scene with Lanfear and Shamael in Teleran Rioid. I think this scene is fairly neat for a bunch of different reasons, but what I wanted to talk about were these seals in the background. They actually called out a bunch of the Forsaken by name. They called out Malgedian, they called out Grendel, and they called out the boys. Now, there's been some questions on what the boys could mean. Could it mean Samael? Could it mean Asmodean? Could it mean Raven? Bathamal Agenor, we really don't know which boys they're talking about, but it pretty much cements the fact that these things within his dream world, or in his dream where Lanfear and him are sitting, are likely seals, and there's an individual one for each of the Forsaken, which is a bit different than the book series, but I've mentioned it before in one of my videos, and I think it's kind of a smart move, because then they can go to an area, for example, Caemlyn and Andor, find one of these seals that is sealing Ravn up, break it, and then he's just let loose in Andor. Or the same with Samael in Ilion, or any of the other Forsaken in their little niches and towns. Malkedian in the Tower, for example, things like that. I think that's kind of a smart, neat way to do it. And if you happen to see one of these nearby in one of the scenes in the show, just out in the open, I think it's very likely that this is probably an indication that a Forsaken will be released in that episode, or near that episode, or near that area. But either way, a nice little call out to that. All right, now we're going to talk about this warder and this Aes Sedai that kind of showed up in the end of the episode and had some people scratching their heads, but she's pretty important. So this Aes Sedai, the Black Ajah, is Rima Galfrey. Now, she's pretty important in the book series because after Gawyn was collared for the first time, she met her, and Rima basically begs her to remember her real name because she is starting to break. She's made damane as well, and is also leashed with the Gawyn while she's going through her, I don't want to call it training so much as breaking. Now, much later on in the book series, she goes by the name of Pura, and she's completely broken, but I think this is a call out to her, and we'll likely see her actually collared at some point in the next couple of episodes, and perhaps thrown in a cell with the Gawyn. It's going to be hard to watch, it really is, but it's a nice little call to introduce her first, rather than just in the cell with the Gawyn. We get to actually see her as an Aes Sedai with her warder before she's collared. Very cool. Now, either way, we actually get to see the damane collars. So there's been a whole lot of talk about these collars not being completely book accurate, and they're not in such a way that they look very differently. However, when the collar was first put on Gawyn's neck in this particular scene, it resembled the collars in the book series a lot more than what we normally see, and then it kind of morphed into what we see on screen. It's easier to see on screen, it's much more unwieldy, it's easier to indicate that they're causing pain to the people. It just looks better on screen rather than a simple silver collar around the neck, but this is a call out to what the collar actually looked like in the book series, and then it turns into this for the show. So it kind of like, after it attaches itself, this kind of is formed around it either way, and this is what we see on the damane in the show. Now, the other thing is the leashes. In the book series, the collars and the bracelets were connected by a silvery leash, and this was a big part of a lot of the damane and Sul'Dam's relationships, because they couldn't move. If that bracelet was put on a peg, they couldn't move any further out than the leash was, and it's how they controlled and moved them around. We've heard some interviews with the showrunner and other people that have said that it's kind of unwieldy and the logistics of it were hard, but we're going to see it from time to time, especially during training, and we see it hooked onto a Gawyn here. So I think this is a call out to that. We're not likely to see this silver leash all of the time. However, we definitely did get to see it in this scene. We'll likely see it while they're training a Gawyn to sort of more dehumanize her, so to speak. And then we got to end with this. This isn't really an Easter egg so much as the fact that Lanfear has complete and utter dominion over the world of dreams. She can appear however she wants, and of course she has that giant black crescent moon over her head, and this is more of a fan service thing for Matt Hatch than anything else, since Lanfear is his favorite character. But I wanted to include it just to kind of remind everybody that Lanfear is incredibly dangerous in the world of dreams, and in fact, again, I gave full book spoilers, and we're talking full spoilers everywhere. Lanfear doesn't actually die in the book series. She actually tricks Perrin in the world of dreams to say she lives, and that was one of the secrets that Brandon Sanderson revealed earlier last year about Lanfear, that she still lived on beyond the end of the last battle because she was so good in the world of dreams. And I think we're going to see some really neat stuff in the next couple of episodes, especially in the world of dreams with her and Rand, before Rand learns how to protect and shield his dreams from her like he did in the book series, because she really is that good. All right, so a ton of Easter eggs in today's video, but I likely didn't get them all. So if I missed some, please leave them in the comments down below. I'll consolidate them all at the end of the season and add them with everything else, and put out an Easter egg video on all the stuff that I had missed for season 2 and I didn't recognize until after you folks had told me it. I'll try to credit everybody that gives me those Easter eggs. Some really cool stuff nonetheless. Now, we do have a couple more videos coming out in the next couple of days. I still have yet to release my episode 4 breakdown. That'll come out in the next day or two. The episode 5 breakdown is also coming out in the next day or two. I have a couple of news videos, and I also have a couple of other videos about interesting things that have happened during the series so far, but they're all kind of in process right now. I'm trying to get out one video per day at this point. I think that's likely the sweet spot as far as the YouTube algorithm goes, and my ability to actually produce videos is about one a day. So I'm doing my best here, but there's a lot to cover, and I'm really happy about it. I'm not complaining. I'm enjoying myself. Now, I want to hear your thoughts on this particular episode in the comments down below. Did you folks like it? What were your favorite parts? What were your least favorite parts? I also want to hear about anything you're expecting to come. Give me your predictions for the next couple of episodes of the season, because there's some big stuff coming, and I'm not really sure exactly how it's going to play out. We know for sure we're getting Heroes of the Horn. We know for sure we're getting White Cloaks and Shan Chen fighting in Falm. We know for sure... well, we're pretty sure Moiraine's going to get her power back at one point or another, but maybe not. Maybe she won't. Maybe she's just going to be like this for the rest of the series. I have no idea, but let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. And I want to thank you all very, very much for sticking with me here, and here's to many more.